Welcome to Courageous Dialogues, podcast where I try and get to the heart of the matter with people in your community. I didn't realise, but you received an award, most influential. Yeah, that's for you.
I just about going to get it too.
Thanks for coming on Courageous Dialogues. Can you tell us a little bit about that award?
Oh, well, I assume one of the main categories for the decision making is obviously how handsome or good looking someone is. That I'm sure that's
Very good.
I'm assuming that's the main criteria. But look, no, do you know what? I had a few things. I had a few things happen at the beginning of this year. Are you aware of ISTE?
Yeah.
IST.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you are. But I guess more broadly for the listeners, so the
Audience.
ISTE is the International Society of Technology and Education. So ISTE, it's a huge conference. It says international, but it's always in America, like the baseball World Series. One country plays it, but ISTE is it's by far the largest conference, right? Like, as you know, 30 odd thousand teachers will show up every year
Wow.
to go along. So it's a bit of a big event. So I won at the tail end of last year, and then was meant to pick up in Colorado earlier this year. The ISTE Making It Happen Award, the IT Making It Happen, which was part of the ISTE affiliates. Obviously, not obviously, but I'm based in New South Wales, so I was part of the New South Wales ICTE group, which is one of the ISTE affiliates over here in Australia. So that was pretty cool. And then picked up the award that's over your shoulder, the Educator magazine's 2024 Most Influential Educator award. But the big one that really shocked me was there was the District Administrators Leadership Institute over in the US, named the 100 most influential educators on the planet. And somehow that I snuck onto that list, and they literally only named one Aussie on the entire list. There was only one Australian named, and it happened to be me. So I was pretty chuffed with that. Actually, that one's the one that I particularly am very, very proud of, because I'm very nerdy and very proudly patriotic Australian. I love being an Aussie, and I really do actually. I'm a bit nerdy about it. But so I was really happy to be able to fly the Australian flag on that international sort of level. And America being America, obviously there was very North American centric, that 100 most influential people. So to be able to get on that list was actually pretty darn cool. Something I was a little bit proud of.
So you did saying that you have the coolest job in the world.
I do have a pretty cool job. So I'm now work for HP, and I'm supported by Intel, and I'm basically HP's education ambassador for Australia and New Zealand. And really, I now get to go around just advocating good digital pedagogy, good digital thinking. That's my job. So what was super duper cool was obviously I've been teaching for two and a fair bit of decades, close, not quite 30 years, but I've been a teacher for a long time, and being very passionate about building community and about working with other teachers and just doing fun things. And on the back of COVID, I was lucky enough to have a role in New South Wales Department of Education at the time that saw me have a quite a significant position during the rollout of our learning from home solution. In fact, it was my team that built learning from home. And the tail end of that, HP kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Brett, we've got this position of education ambassador. We don't really know what the role description is, um,
Mhm.
but we kind of need someone to advocate for good digital learning, like you do. So, just like you've done for Aussie Ed, which was a community that I had started a number of years ago, just like I was doing and executing very large scale programs across the state for New South Wales. And obviously at that stage I had my book out, which is why I've got the link to America. My book, A Mammoth Lesson Teaching in the Digital
Mhm.
Age, was quite successful in America, bestseller in the US and in Canada.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's pretty cool. Did
Mm.
better there than here, which is kind of weird, right? Um,
More people
but
there.
yeah, more people there. But um, yeah, I guess being able to have that credibility from the book point of view, the speaking circuit over in America, where I go a couple of times a year to speak in conferences over in the States. And I guess that delivery of large scale education programs that I was doing for New South Wales DOE, and then the community building that I did with Aussie Ed, obviously, is the one that most people know me via, but Ed Poet Society, and the Walking Ed and all that sort of stuff. So they kind of said, "Can you just like do you?" And I thought, you know what? Of all the jobs, um, if I can't do me, if I that's one job I can't stuff up. If they just needed me to be me, but for them, can you just do you,
Mm.
but for us? I'm like, yeah, I could do that. I can do that. So I've got this great job now where 50% of my role is going around Australia and New Zealand and just championing great digital practice, digital use, thought leadership, and all that sort of stuff. And because I'm not bound, um, I guess by anyone's agenda, I get to speak pretty openly and candidly. And now that probably sounds contradictory because I've just highlighted that I work for a tech company,
Mm.
but I'm not bound by anything. They're very, very good at giving me a long leash and a long lead, and I don't talk product, I don't talk things, I don't sell anything to anybody.
Mm.
But what I do is I build relationships, and I can talk with authenticity, and it's being able to talk with that authenticity that allows, I guess, people to really listen, and allows me to do a lot of good at scale. So that's half my role, and the other half is just finding schools and sometimes systems, and being able to help a school with like digital transformations, and doing, I guess putting into practice what I'm preaching, and actually helping their schools run a teacher training and upskilling and all that sort of stuff, so that they can make an impact on student learning.
Yeah.
It's a fun job
So
for a nerd.
I don't actually remember when I first met you, but our paths have been in and out for the last 20 years in education and
Yeah.
IT because I've sort of been in different tracks as well. So I can't remember if it was a HP conference, if it was Intel, if it was one of those little twilight sessions. But I did get a call from you earlier this year, back in February, a little school in the Northern Territory, 45 minutes from Darwin, with about 200 students, um, are working on a project with you. And you were quite excited because you were going to come out and present them with an award. Can you tell
Mm.
us a little bit about HP Reinvent
Yeah,
Classroom?
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's kind of that second half of my job that I was just talking about, where I get to practice what I preach, and then actually help schools with their digital transformations. That's what we did in a little school called Berry Springs up in the Northern Territory. Now you described it as south of Darwin. You know what I love to say? 15 minutes from Humpty Doo. I
Very
feel like
good.
that. Yeah, I feel like that rolls off the tongue so much, and everyone who knows or has heard of Humpty Doo knows Humpty Doo, and people who have no idea, who have never heard of Humpty Doo, just could you think of
Yeah.
a more quintessential Australian like town name than Humpty Doo. It sounds
Now that
sounds
you've
like
said
something.
that, now that you've
Yeah,
said that, I do have family and friends in Humpty Doo, so
yeah. There you go.
they will be on me for this.
I think everyone in the territory, everyone in Darwin, you can measure where you are, unless you're actually very specifically in Darwin. Everything is measured. In my experience, everything is measured in how far away from Humpty Doo you are.
Hmm.
You hear that quite a lot. And of course, on the menus in seafood restaurants all across Australia, barramundi from Humpty Doo. So a lot of good barra up in the territory, right? But
Hmm.
uh, no, no. So we had been running for quite some time, probably for about
Hmm.
18 months, the digital transformation program that I'm part of called Reinvent the Classroom. Now it's supported by HP and Intel, but really it's not about product at all. It's about, like I said, it's about teacher training. And the process pretty much is not rocket science. You come in and you do an assessment and you test, like you survey students, you survey the leadership team, you survey the teachers, and you get a bit of a measure on where people are with their digital tech usage. Um, then you basically map out based on what the surveys called out, based on what the schools um, annual improvement plan are, and then of course whatever the system is with their overarching goals, and you sort of triangulate those things, and you go, okay, well let's let's make a game plan based on this, on these 3 points of information, and let's actually map out um, some strategic like professional development. So I think on that pathway, Berry Springs became the very first school in all of Australia to have every single teacher level 2 certified Adobe educators. So they all become very proficient with the Adobe suite, a whole bunch of Microsoft training, and I think now they have the only Microsoft Innovative Educator expert in all of the territory is at Berry Springs with a whole bunch of MIEs as well. But it wasn't just about upskilling with tech tools. It was also what are some practical ways that we can change our programming. And I know Rebecca Beck, one of the Year 6 teachers out there, doing government, is every Year 6 teacher has done 1,000 times over, right? And she
Hmm.
would usually have a big bit of butcher's paper, and the kids would cut up and do the projects or cardboard, and politician, a former prime minister, and all that sort of stuff. But because we had given her enough skills, suddenly the task was, embed this QR code that went off to the website, and here's another link to the video that had the students dividing. So it was the same pedagogical principles of what she had always done, but just an enhanced digital delivery of those same things. And then that's kind of, I guess, the whole point is how can we use technology to enhance and give opportunities that were previously impossible. Now, suddenly, instead of doing butcher's paper and cardboard and cutting out pictures and pasting them, we're having these children develop websites and have video interviews and all this sort of stuff. So not only learning the content of the curriculum, but developing a digital skill set that they can use when they enter high school, and then obviously eventually when they enter the workforce. So we did all that sort of stuff, and then we measured again, and they had great improvement, and in fact so much improvement that of all the schools that we worked with in New Zealand and Australia, they were the most improved. They had
Hmm.
greater improvement than any other statistically. So it was great. This little school, middle of the territory, doing so well. And on the back of that, spoke with the principal and the deputy, and was able to twist their arm and get them to, I guess, write a submission to the Global EdTech Awards.
Hmm.
And they put in like a write up of all the things that we had done, and a whole bunch of the, I guess, evidence that we had gathered. The statistical evidence was very powerful, but the anecdotal evidence and children work samples and teacher input and all that sort of stuff, obviously very powerful as well. And they actually then won the global EdTech Awards for digital transformation. So like the best school in the world for improving digital learning. Like, pretty darn cool
Yeah.
that a school 45 minutes from Darwin or 15 minutes from Humpty Doo, good old Berry Springs, was able, this little school in the middle of the territory was able to not just fly the Australian flag, but that really position themselves at the top of the tree globally. And that's super cool, right? It's just
Yeah.
something else. It's not something that happens every day.
You ruined my lead in. I was going to say you started texting me back in June, all excited. It
It's
was
so
getting
exciting.
screened. It was actually very exciting, I think, for the Northern Territory as well. So I just want to touch on a few things because Berry Springs Primary School is a little school. It's not decked
Mm.
out with the greatest and latest, right? And quite often people think when, schools win these awards, they're coming from a school that has everything.
Yeah.
So, what is the challenge of working with a school like Berry Springs across Australia and New Zealand?
Yeah. Okay. So, look, the big challenge, if I'm going to speak really directly, the biggest challenge is having the leadership team that is really supportive and actually wants the change and backs the change. If you've got someone who is kind of happy with the status quo and not really interested in doing much, well, it doesn't matter how much support you give them, really much is going to happen. But the deputy and the principal at Berry Springs, they were just absolute superstars. They, everything that you gave them, they lapped that up and then asked for more. And they're the type of schools that, given the right support, are going to flourish, no matter what that support might be. If it had been a literacy program, they would have flourished in literacy, like mathematics, because it all stems from the leadership. And I think this is quite often forgotten. We know that teachers are really time poor. We know that, like, it's hard. It's a hard gig. It's a hard gig. I've been out of teaching now for a couple of years, and my my hours, my daily hours, far more than I ever taught. Far more. Like, I pull per hours for a working day, way more now than I did as a
Mhm.
teacher. But I am nowhere near as fatigued. Like, nowhere near as fatigued as what I was when I was teaching. It's not uncommon for me most days of the week to do a 12-hour to put 12 hours onto the computer. Like, that's nothing. That's very, very common. If not sometimes a little bit more, right? Like, it's no, that's nothing unusual, but nowhere near as fatigued as what you are when you're in the classroom. So when you're in the classroom, you are tired. It is hard. You're exhausted. You're overwhelmed. There is so much you need to do. You have to prioritize what's really important. And if the leadership team isn't valuing something, then you know that it's not important to them. You know then that suddenly becomes not important to you because you can only do so much. Um, but when they're showing that something is of significant and something that's important, then you realize that it's important. You also raise that, and then that's where you get that's the hurdle. That's where you actually, I guess, make all the really terrific impact. So
Mm.
that's on a practical execution of change. Find the schools or work with the people who've got those great leaders. Um, but
Mm.
because I think, do you know what? Teachers, quick sidetrack before I go on, by the way, rabbit
Mhm.
hole. I think teachers are very good at playing good student. Like, we like to do what we're told, and
Mhm.
we don't like to rock the boat. And we're good kids, and we play we slip into the role of student, and it's almost like the principal becomes the teacher and we become the students as a teacher. And it's like you need to be um, expressly given permission, a green
Mhm.
light to be remarkable.
Mhm.
Um, have you ever um, have you ever heard of a term called purple cow? Like the purple cow. Do you know the purple cow?
No,
I have to quickly.
no,
I'm having a
really.
mind. Um, I'm trying to remember um, the name of the author. Seth Godin. Seth Godin.
Mhm.
Right. So Seth Godin wrote this book called Purple Cow. It was to do with marketing. Um, and if you're driving down the countryside and you see cow after cow after cow, pretty much pretty soon all the cows blend into each other. You can't really distinguish one cow from another cow, right?
Mhm.
But if you come across a purple cow, that cow would be remarkable. It would stand out. You would remember that cow. You would remember the
Mhm.
purple cow because it was remarkable. Now, in our lessons and in our work, like day to day, all of our lessons are like the brown cows. Like if everything we
Mhm.
deliver is the same, but what stands out for the student? So if we deliver our content as a purple cow, if we do something remarkable, then that's memorable for our student. That increases their engagement, increases their memory. All of a sudden, that's something they want to be involved in. But as a teacher, we're so good at playing the role of student and not wanting to rock the boat. We need to be given the green light to do something remarkable. Remarkable teachers need to be activated by remarkable leaders. Remarkable leaders need to
Mhm.
give that green light so teachers have the permission to be remarkable. And I think that's something that we can all I
Absolutely.
just try to think on. So that's how we make the change. And I guess the real secret of the sauce from a HP point of view is that nothing we ever did was cookie cutter. We don't come in and
Mhm.
say, here is the solution on how to improve your school. And we particularly don't do like a lot of, I guess, startups or people that are pushing their agenda come and say, here is a tech solution you should buy or you should purchase, buy this tool, and this tool will solve your problem. That's not what anything that I do is about. As you said, like Berry Springs didn't exactly have the best tech in the world,
Mhm.
but it's training the teachers to use tech really effectively, to be remarkable, make those remarkable lessons, just like Rebecca did back in that year six, had done the same sort of lesson in government and politics and prime ministers for however many years. Brown cow, brown cow, brown cow every year, the same lesson.
Mhm.
Butcher's paper, cardboard, all that. But suddenly, remarkable lesson. We're making video, we're embedding QR codes, we're having audio files, we've got podcasts, all sorts
Mhm.
of things.
So, remarkable leaders lead to remarkable teachers, but how important is the partnership with like an ed tech company like yours?
Yeah, well, look, with the right with the right intention, that's where it is. Like I think industry partnerships are incredibly important. Um, Making sure you're picking the right partnership, that's that
Mhm.
that's the vital part. That's the vital part. The one thing I did learn through Aussie Ed though, so before I had any of these roles, this is probably actually the way, in all likelihood, the first way we ever connected was probably on Twitter. Um,
Mhm.
so Aussie Ed, for those
Mhm.
people who don't know what Aussie Ed is, about 12 or so years ago, I started like an online group called Aussie Ed and would meet every Sunday and would have informal professional development. And on a quiet week, we'd have about 500 or so teachers
Mhm.
jump on a Sunday night and share best practice on a different theme and topic every week. But then on the big ones, you'd have 10, 15, 20,000 teachers at any one time showing up to these online events. So the scope and the scale of sharing was just incredible. It was the largest online network of teachers in Australia, by far, actually. It
And
was
you've
pretty
just
cool.
told everyone what I was doing on a Sunday night 12 years
Yes,
ago.
so I don't
Good on
expect.
you.
Yeah, right. But what I learned was
Mhm.
we would have different different hosts each week. We'd have different themes, and at first, it was just like the organising group, and we would each host, and it was different things that were happening in our schools, or I guess topics and issues that we were dealing with. But after a couple of years, of course, you start broadening out and reaching out to actual experts from different industries and saying, "Hey, would you like to come and talk to teachers?" Do you know what? So surprising that when you reach out to these people that you think, hey, I'm just a year 10 history teacher or something like that. Why do they want to talk to me? You get famous authors.
Mhm.
You get
Mhm.
like, CEOs of companies. You reach out to massive, tech companies in Silicon
Mhm.
Valley, and they're like, yeah, sure, no worries. What time? Let's do it.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and it's surprising how much industry actually does want to support schools. They We need to pick the right ones because you don't want to pick just someone who's going to push and hard sell their particular
Mhm.
product. You want someone who's going to help you. You need to know why you want an industry, like what is it that you want from them, and then reach out and be very explicit with that. But they don't also know how to connect with schools, and they want to. So if you reach out to them, quite often they're going to accept that. So there is that connection between industry and education that is seems daunting. It seems like this big gulf, but actually, if you be brave enough to do a little bit of research on LinkedIn, find out who is who in the zoo, and reach out to them, you'll be surprised at how often they'll go, "Yeah, no worries. When do you want to jump on a Teams call?"
Yeah.
Like,
Bit
yeah,
like me calling you last week
yeah, exactly,
for this
exactly.
podcast. So every now and again, every few years, I jump back into a school to get my currency back up. Primary, secondary, I tend to like change. And I'm back in a school just doing some relief teaching, digital technologies year 10. And can I say, the last time I taught digital technologies in year 10 was probably about 2.5, 3 years ago. The change
Nothing's
with
changed.
AI,
Nothing's changed
no, the
much. Nothing's
change
changed
with
at all. Stays out. It's
AI,
exactly the same.
the change with
The world
AI.
changed overnight. Has it has
So,
changed so
um,
rapidly.
what I'm finding, and I don't know if it's just the kids that I'm teaching, the cohort that I'm teaching, but what I'm finding the skill levels between what was being taught, say, 2.5, 3 years ago in a classroom as a result of the AI and the help component within coding, the level is just pushed up to the extreme. So, in terms of working with schools at the moment in the AI space, do you do anything with that?
Yeah, quite a bit. It probably won't surprise you to know that that's at the moment that's probably one of the highest requests. Um, Last week I was at the New South Wales and ACT Career Advisor Association annual conference, and there I spoke about using AI to help career advisors do
Mm,
their work more efficiently, and how they can utilize AI. I think AI is changing all aspects of not just education but society, and I think it's ignorant to think that it's not. Um, I do have um, great positive thoughts about AI. I'm overall positive, but there are, I think, caveats on um, what we need to do just to make sure that it's a net positive, and because there are pitfalls, there are dangers to having AI within our schools, and they're not necessarily always the first things that people tend to think of. Um, I actually think, do you know what? There's the big talk at the moment. You talk to everyone. The two things that everyone will say. I'm going to get my high horse for a second, Ten. The two things that everyone says is, all right, data privacy, data security, and all that sort of stuff. Very risky, blah blah blah. And then kids cheating. Do you know what? The second one in particular can't stand that as an argument. I can't
mhm,
stand that, and I think anyone preaching that stuff is a charlatan. I'm trying to push the word AI grifter. If you have a look, there's a lot of sudden AI experts in the world giving schools in particular advice on AI in education. There's people
mm,
changing titles and you have a look at someone. I always say to people when I get in front of an audience, I think if you're talking to someone about AI, go just have a look at their LinkedIn profile and see what they were doing in their previous role, and it's got nothing to do with tech or it's got nothing to do with AI. Maybe just have a consideration. How long have they been doing AI while they're giving your entire school or entire department a direction on what they should be doing?
mm,
The reality is, AI in education has not been out long enough for anyone to be an authentic expert
mhm.
in AI in education. It's too new. It is too new. We don't know what a lot of the long term effects are of various AI programs. Every single one of us is experimenting and exploring with AI in education, all bar two people. There are two Australians that I would listen to. Um, Toby Walsh from the University of New South Wales and Genevieve Bell from Australian ANU. Now, Genevieve Bell
Mhm.
was the AI expert for Intel for about 15 years, and then helped Stanford set up the School of AI, and then got headhunted and came back to ANU and established and founded the School of Cybernetics here in
Hmm.
Australia. And her entire research is about AI pedagogy. Like, she has been literally doing that for years and years and years and years. Um, they are the only two people that I would listen to as authorities on AI in
Hmm.
education in Australia. There's a couple other people who are well on their way to being experts, but it's all so new that I don't think you could even claim they're very
Hmm.
well informed people and trusted people. I don't know if I'd call it expert.
Well, so to be honest, when I jumped back in a few weeks back, and I was overwhelmed at first because I'm getting told there's hardly any digital technology teachers in the space of 10, 11, and 12. And after my first week, I'm like, no wonder why. But I think it was just I had to readjust my thinking. I had to readjust my thinking about what I'm teaching them in terms of the AI component and how I can actually use that within the classroom
Mm.
to teach them the concepts and more verbal explanations, and then change the way that I was thinking about, how they present back in terms of the assessment. So I just had to rewire my brain. But at the same time, I've been thinking, I wonder if this is a case of, our digital technology teachers are all sort of non-existent at the
I think
moment.
I think that's part of it. It's scary. It's a time of rapid change and change fatigue and all that sort of stuff. You said something there about how you had to rethink your assessment, and I think the big question is, do children use AI for cheating? Right? Like, is that it?
Mm,
Are we weakening our learning by
mm,
having AI? Now, I think do you know what? I think that's bull. I think that's
mm,
I call baloney on that whole argument because do you know what? We have known for a very, very, very long time what good quality assessment is. And good quality assessment practice is not short answer questions, it's not multiple choice, and it's not take home essays. Do you know what? If the one thing that AI does is give us all as educators a kick in the backside so that we get rid of multiple choice, short answer, take home essays, then bloody well good. Like, you know what?
mhm,
We know from Bloom's taxonomy, we know that we need to be hitting much higher order evaluative thinking, discussions and or creative sort of stuff. We know we need to be up here. What is AI really good at is really, really good at the low level reciting of facts. So let's not set assessment
mhm,
tasks at a low level reciting of facts. Let's make a child get up and talk and
mm,
present and argue and defend their point of view. And wow, surprise, surprise, not only will we be making our assessments AI proof, but we'll be doing what we've probably known the research has been telling us to do for 15 or 20 years. These are the types of assessments we should have bloody been doing anyway.
yeah.
So I think there's a myth of this is what the AI grifters they talk a lot about cheating, and I think, do you know what? It's so short-sighted because everyone
Mhm,
just needs to do what you just described. We need to be aware that AI is something that kids are using. We need to be aware that AI is out there. And we just need to tailor our activities to either lean into AI when we want to lean into it, because it can be very, very useful,
mhm,
or craft activities that AI doesn't really help. Um,
mhm,
or if it does
mm,
help, it actually helps in the very best of ways. And we just need to craft that. And then, you know what? Problem solved. I don't think in 18 months' time we'll be having a conversation about AI and cheating
no.
because we just need to change our assessment practice. And once we've changed our assessment practice, then that's it. Because I think a lot of teachers are still in denial, more than you probably would realize. And
Mm,
you're back in schools.
mhm.
I'd be curious to see, like, so often when I go out to schools, I ask teachers how many of their students do they think are using AI? And be quite surprised at the predicted low levels. Teachers assume not many. Um, but like I always say, so do you know, there's only been as you already know this, but
Mm,
like Netflix took about
mhm,
2.5 years to get a million subscribers. Instagram took about 7 months to get a million users. ChatGPT took 5 days to get a million
mhm,
users. Like we all use Netflix. We all know how many kids use Insta. Something that was so much more rapid than either of those two ubiquitous items. Of course, our students are using it. In fact, there's only been 2 periods of decreased usage of ChatGPT since it launched. I'm not sure if you know when those 2 periods were, but I won't make you or your viewers hang. The only two, so it's been exponential growth of ChatGPT usage, minus 2 periods where there's been a drop off in usage. When does it drop off? North American school holidays. When North America goes on summer holidays, or sorry, not North America, when the Northern Hemisphere goes on summer holidays, ChatGPT usage drops. Summer holidays in the Northern Hemisphere, ChatGPT drops.
Love it.
Yeah, so many kids are using it. So we
Yeah.
need to make sure that we are using it smart, or we're using assessment like you are doing. We're setting up assessment tasks in the appropriate way.
So, final question.
Good.
Courageous dialogues. Can you think of a time that you were courageous, or think of a time that you've seen something really courageous?
Yeah, look, I'll say 3 things very quickly, because I know I've got a bad habit of talking a little bit too much. Sometimes it takes me 20 minutes just to say hello. Look, I think I personally was courageous in my career change, and I'm still slightly uncomfortable with it, to be honest with you. Existing in the corporate world, it's very different to school. Everyone around has KPIs. I've got KPIs, and it's dog eat dog. You hit your stuff, or see you later, like type of stuff. The one thing I did learn though, and you hear this all the time, you're always told our skill set that we have as an educator, and you know this from probably moving into government and other sorts of bureaucracies. The skill sets that we have as teachers are so applicable to different areas outside of the classrooms and outside of schools. Like to be able to coordinate multiple people at any one time to deliver one project or to get one thing over the line. It's just like teachers, we do this blindfolded. We do this every day, multiple times, and then suddenly, I think we get to run rings. I'm not sure what your experience was, but I think sometimes I get to run rings around some of the corporate people, because you know what? If you can handle a bunch of teenagers, then you can handle a bunch of adults easy. If you can herd teenagers going. But so there's that courageous. I would say be courageous in reaching out to industry partners. I think you will find more success than probably what you are expecting, or what your viewers are expecting. So if you're doing a project, and I think I had at one stage, I know I was working at a school. Was in a junior school, but year 11 and year 12 were doing a project for their major works for the digital technologies, and they all had to use a part of the Adobe suite for their grand finale. I reached out to Adobe head office over in Silicon Valley and said, "Hey, a group of the girls at the school that I'm teaching at, they need this." We ended up getting the actual engineers that worked on Dreamweaver and worked on a number of them. And so you've got these like 16 and 17-year-old girls actually getting one-on-one, like sort of mentoring with the Dreamweaver engineers on how to create things. Like people you don't expect to respond will respond. And I guess that courageous, I guess I used a different term. I said, remarkable leaders empower remarkable teachers. So I guess that is giving people around you the green light to be remarkable, to be courageous. As a leader, give that green light to your staff. As a teacher, give that green light to your students. Allow them to do something different. Allow them to be courageous. Allow them to make remarkable memories.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on to Courageous Dialogues.
No worries.